Hi, I'm back, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the issue of abortion, and then I will move on to other things. But so the whole thing with the pro-life versus pro-choice, I have frustrations with both sides. Even though I'm pro-life, I see a lot of people just getting really obnoxious with their beliefs as far as pro-life is concerned, which I understand that it's a very polarizing issue. It gets a lot of people riled up, but when you're bashing a woman that's considering getting an abortion, or that has already had an abortion, when you're just bashing her and hating on her and calling her out, there's a fine line between calling someone out about something that you think is wrong and just being hateful and overly judgmental. So I think the responsibility as far as abortion is concerned is more with the abortion doctors and the politicians that are okay with abortion and so forth. I'm not going to say that it isn't murder. I believe that it is murder because I believe that that's a human being and you're taking their life, and that equates to murder. But just going around bashing women and calling them baby killers, that's not going to help your cause at all. If anything, that's just going to make people think you're crazy and hate you more, and then they're not going to listen to whatever you have to say. And I realize that with being pro-life, there are people that aren't going to listen. They aren't going to care what you have to say, and that continuing to talk to them or debate with them, it's like banging your head against a brick wall hoping that the brick wall will break, and instead you just bash your brains in. It's not productive in any way. And so I'm not saying that people shouldn't speak up about the issue, because they could. They definitely should, and if they feel strongly about it, they should. However, sometimes those strong emotions can get in the way of people being logical, being open-minded, or being reasonable. And so for that reason, I think people need to be level-headed when they approach this issue, because they turn more people away from the pro-life movement by being fanatical and being hateful and judgmental, instead of helping them to see the light and see the reasoning in being pro-life and in respecting life. So, and then another thing with pro-lifers, and it's kind of a tricky subject with me, but a lot of times in response to pro-choice people, pro-life people will put up graphic photos and videos and things, and just, show the really gruesome part of it. And although people do need to be educated and do need to know what abortion is and what it entails, being extremely graphic about it, although it's not necessarily wrong, it makes people have the perception that pro-lifers are like cruel and sadistic. And so I think people need to be careful with that. So there's definitely a line that probably shouldn't be crossed, and you have to know where that is. Definitely do educate people, but on the same side of that, being overly graphic with things is probably just going to turn people away from whatever message you have. And if you are participating in a protest or rally, you can hold up a sign that has graphic images of an aborted baby or their remains or whatever, and that may get your message across, but just as productive, and probably even more so, would be to hold up a picture of a smiling baby and a picture of maybe an ultrasound and a growing baby in the ultrasound. I'm not going to say that it's wrong to educate people about what abortion is and what it entails. And there is a lot more to it than just the abortion and what the abortion is. A lot of people kind of tend to think of it as like, oh, it's a sterile medical procedure. You know, it's just like going in and getting a tooth pulled out. Well, no, it isn't. That's a lie. It isn't. And other people will equate an abortion to a miscarriage. That is extremely offensive to me personally, because I've gone through 2 miscarriages and it was really hard and traumatic for me. And I'm still kind of like grappling with everything as far as that goes. So to say that someone who really wanted to have a child and for whatever medical reasons that didn't happen, and they ended up losing that child, that pregnancy, that baby, comparing that with the intentional termination of a pregnancy that's unwanted, someone not wanting their child for whatever reasons, selfish or non-selfish, and there are a wide variety of reasons, and people need to understand this, both pro-choice and pro-life, that there are a wide variety of reasons why people have abortions. And in my opinion, and not to be ugly about it, but in my own personal opinion, I think there are very few exceptions. Very few. I think the majority of the time when people have abortions, it is for selfish reasons. And the majority of the time, it is not medically necessary. It is not psychologically necessary to get an abortion. And so that's just my take on that. But to compare an abortion to a miscarriage is extremely offensive to women that are trying to conceive, that have had miscarriages, that have had fertility problems. That is highly offensive. So that is something that gets me like really pissed off and upset, because, you know, I myself and one of my sisters and a sister-in-law, we have had that problem. And so it is highly offensive that someone could compare abortion to miscarriage. So let me put that out there. Just pro-life or pro-choice, you should not make that comparison, because yes, in a way you could compare, because someone that is having an abortion and they're not doing it in a surgical way, they may take a pill and what happens is basically like a miscarriage, but it's an intentional miscarriage. So you have to consider intent. Women that go through miscarriages, there may be external factors why they may have a miscarriage. There may be things, maybe they weren't taking care of themselves, maybe their health wasn't the best. But women that have miscarriages, it's not something that they want to happen necessarily. And a lot of times women that have had a miscarriage, they have guilt already, like I could have done this different, or I could have done that different if I'd only, or like it's my fault kind of a thing. So they already have like a guilt, even though it's an unnecessary guilt, because most of the time it isn't anything that they could have done anything about necessarily. It's something that's out of their hands or out of their control. They have some medical issue or medical problem, reproductive problem, that makes it happen. And it maybe not even necessarily a medical issue. There is a high statistic of miscarriage. I heard a saying that there is as many as 1 in 4 pregnancies that end in miscarriage, and it's not even necessarily that they had a medical problem per se. There was just a problem with the pregnancy. But as it is, women that have gone through a miscarriage, they already have that frustration and that guilt and that self-blame. So to make the comparison that to someone who did not want to be pregnant and did not want to have a pregnancy, it is really offensive. And especially for those who have miscarried who are pro-life and who very much value that child that they lost. So I just want to throw that out there. And so in addition to that, as far as the abortion procedure and what goes on with that, there are things about it that are really graphic. If you read up on it, you read that it is highly graphic and gory, and it's not a pleasant topic, regardless of how you feel about abortion, pro or against. It's really extremely graphic. And in addition to that, what happens to the aborted baby or fetus afterwards, it's that's a whole other topic entirely, because a lot of times, since the fetus is not wanted, maybe not even recognizable after an abortion, sometimes there are scientific things that go on with that. The fetus is sometimes cremated, sometimes used, sometimes thrown away as medical waste. And then in other situations, they are even used in research of different sorts, which is kind of a whole other ethical issue, and a whole other debate. But I think people need to be sensitive to the fact that it is a graphic and gruesome thing, and whether you're pro or against, pro-life or pro-choice, it's a really sensitive issue, and you can't get too graphic with that and not expect people to get upset on either side of the issue. So that's something I would throw out there for pro-life people, because I think there needs to be a little bit of sensitivity and a little bit of common sense as far as that goes. And I'm going to make another video in just a minute, because this one's getting